Hello, everyone, and welcome to the webinar, Urban Mobility Challenges in the Digital Area. This webinar is part of the Swedish Innovation Weeks in Brazil. The year is 2020, and we are starting the 10th edition of the Innovation Weeks. We are also here to launch a new project. We've been working with Curitiba since 2013. And this year we are launching a new project, a new initiative. So we will get there, but first we want to talk a little bit about mobility. My name is Semida Silveira, and I'm the founder and the executive director of Sustainable Vision Global Ventures, a co-leader of this project that we are going to launch today. I'm also professor at KTH. And I have here my colleague, Professor Eric Janelius, also professor in in transport planning at KTH, one of the KTH professors involved and the researchers involved in the Curitiba project. Welcome, Eric.
Thank you.
And talking about mobility, this is something, of course, your expertise, and this is a very congregated concept, a very integrated concept, you can say, involving transport, energy, communication, and flows in time and space. So what do you think are the greatest challenges that we have to address today on mobility?
First of all, I think we are right now facing a very great challenge in the COVID-19 epidemic all around the world, which not only affects life and health, but also with all the restrictions really limits people's ability to move around and the choice of how to move around. And that also has a lot of impacts on companies and public transport authorities and so on. So that in the near future, that will be our main challenge, I think. But still there, in the more long term, is the challenges of reaching a sustainable urban transport system that still can provide a good level of accessibility to the people.
Mm-hmm. And the issue of energy and climate change, of course, that is very high in the agenda in Sweden. Maybe not yet reached as high in the world's agenda, but I would say that we do have a global agenda. We do have a global agreement, and the transport sector is a very challenging one. It responds for approximately 1/4 of all the emissions, greenhouse gas emissions. And it's proven one that is quite difficult to address because it involves so many different actors, isn't it? And these different actors is something that we are also going to exemplify today when we talk about mobility and when we talk about our project in Curitiba that involves many, many partners. First of all, now I would like to invite my colleague, Dr. Maria Schilja from Sweco, who's an energy strategist and a consultant at Sweco. Maria will talk about the challenges of mobility as we see them in Sweden and more specifically in the city of Stockholm. Maria, welcome to the show.
Great. So thanks a lot for the invitation today. It's very exciting to be part of this webinar, and I'm here to talk about how Stockholm is dealing with mobility strategies ahead. I work at Sweco, a technical consultancy, and we mainly provide advice to private and public stakeholders related to how to form the sustainable mobility systems of the future and the energy transition. So, sharing my screen, and yes. So the city of Stockholm has a lot of goals when it comes to sustainability for the mobility sector, and these goals are included in the environment program for the city of Stockholm. The general goals that the city has are to be fossil-free and climate positive by 2040, and to also have a fossil-free organization by 2030 for the municipality. There are also short-term goals for the city, and these include to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions to a level of maximum 1.5 tons per capita by 2023, which is quite ambitious, I would say, compared to other cities around the world, and also to be resource smart, to have coherent ecosystems, to have clean air and low noise levels in the city, and also to have a city free of toxic materials and substances. Additionally, the city aims to reduce the climate impact from consumption. And also the Climate Action Plan, which is the second most important document for the city of Stockholm, includes also a climate budget for the city. This leads us to very interesting linkages to the Sustainable Development Goals, and we have appropriate sub-goals and explanations for all sectors of the economy, including mobility. And this is the city's way of targeting goals that are in line with the Paris Agreement.
Sorry, Maria. It seems that we are not seeing your screen. So maybe you are two screens. Then you need to share the right one. I don't know.
It seems that I'm sharing one screen that has the PowerPoint. You don't see anything?
We see you. You still good, but...
I don't know. Okay. Maybe now?
Yes.
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 It's okay. I think I went through the city goals. There's no need for slides. So transport, it plays a very key role in decreasing emissions in Stockholm. As I mentioned before, the goal is to have 1.5 tons of CO2 per year per capita. And we are now approximately at 2 tons CO2. To manage to decrease the emissions, road transport and transport emissions represent a very big part of it, half of the total emissions per capita in 2018. They have generally remained stable over the years compared to emissions of electricity or emissions of the heating sectors. Transport seems to be the hardest to decarbonize. If we look closely into the transport sector, then road transport plays a very big role. We have more than 80% of the emissions coming from the road transport, and much lower share from air transport or machines or sea transport. So road transport is actually key to decrease emissions in the city of Stockholm. So there are a lot of measures being taken at the moment and are being part of the Climate Action Plan that I mentioned before. There are measures related to the traffic, improving the traffic conditions with different parking measures, measures for improving, encouraging cycling, accessibility to various passenger groups, and also trying to shift from road transport to water-based transport for goods. For example, we have the possibility in Stockholm. It's not for every city around the world, but for Stockholm, it is possible to move transport on water, and also to go for denser city planning that gives better connectivity to public transport. Other measures are connected to the fuels and the vehicles, and there we discuss about increasing the renewable fuel quotas in transport, and then also to increase electrification rates. So both biofuels and electrification are a part of that, as well as communication campaigns, especially for ethanol cars, and then converting gasoline cars to ethanol usage is also part of the plan, and offering also procurement options for climate effective heavy duty transport, as well as differentiating the congestion tax that we have in Stockholm based on climate criteria. Then when we go apart from the road transport, we go into the other sectors. In work machines, there are also goals that have to do with the increased share of biofuels in the work machines, and also procurement that takes into account climate effects when it comes to the yellow machines, work machines area. And the last area related to transport in the Climate Action Plan has to do with the sea transport, electrifying the boats by using charging opportunities at the docking stations or at the ports, and then to increasing the share of HVO in the biofuel, the biodiesel, in the boats that are in traffic in the archipelago region of Stockholm. But all of these measures leads to a lot of challenges. And I have summarized here before I close the challenges that lie ahead if we discuss sustainable urban mobility for the case of Stockholm. One of them is how national and EU policies will impact the development of both biofuels and electrification. For the biofuel, the EU has a lot to say when it comes to the subsidy programs and other incentives. Then how to upscale based on the lessons learned from demo projects and other initiatives. We've had in Stockholm a lot of interesting EU programs which dealt with both smart goods transport, encouraging the establishment of smart charging infrastructure on the streets, as well as consolidation center for the transport of goods to construction sites, etc. All these lessons learned, they need to be actually wider implemented across the city and not just in a demonstration project. Another challenge is to prepare the electricity grid for actually handling all of the increased transport electrification we assume we're going to have in the coming years. And this is one of the main challenges for Stockholm, because there are many infrastructure plans when it comes to upgrading the electricity grid, but there is risk that these infrastructure improvements will not be in the same pace as the fast electrification of vehicles. And also ensuring the sustainability of biofuels is another challenge. We are discussing increasing volumes of different biofuels coming into Stockholm. So the sustainability connects both to the origin of the raw materials used for the production, but also in using effective supply chains in order for these biofuels to come in the least environmentally negative way to the consumer. And the last one is to take into account new trends coming up, such as e-commerce, which especially with the COVID pandemic has increased a lot. The shared economy and how carpools and other measures can help decreasing the impact of mobility in the city when it comes to emissions, and also digitalization trends, how we can actually take advantage of the huge amounts of data that we have being gathered by different transport vehicles and users. How can we utilize them in order to understand where we most need the infrastructure and where we most need the incentives to be taken into account. And with this, I want to thank you, and I'd be glad to answer to any questions or discuss with you further. Thank you.
For you, Maria, just meanwhile, you didn't mention the word innovation, although it's all over the place, actually, in a way, in the challenges that you identified. Can you just say a word about that?
Absolutely. Yes, innovation is a big part of the climate action plan for Stockholm that I discussed, that sets all of the goals in this plan, apart from the typical goals on decreasing the emissions, improving energy efficiency and everything else. We have a very clear definition of how cooperation can be developed between various actors, and also what the role of industry and commerce is clarified in the plan, so that we can foster innovation, collaboration and communication. And it has been a tradition in the way the Stockholm projects have been working, the European ones, but also the local ones, to bring in new actors that are actually collaborating for taking new technologies up and running, and then expanding them to other countries or around the world. So it is not just a vital part of the whole process, but it's also a part that is defined and encouraged in the climate action plan itself.
I'll now invite my colleagues from Curitiba to give us their perspective on mobility from the Brazilian side, and particularly from Curitiba side. We will meet Oscar Schmeiske, and we will from IPUC. This is the Institute of Research and Urban Planning in Curitiba. And we will also meet Professor Keiko Fonseca from the Technical Federal University of Curitiba, that will chat about the conditions of mobility planning and sustainability in Curitiba. Welcome, Oscar, to the show.
Good afternoon, good morning, good evening. I'm Oscar. I'm listening to me, okay?
Yes.
Okay. So I start sharing my screen. Please let me know if it's okay.
Now we
Okay.
have it.
Okay. And let's see if it passes through. Curitiba has a long reputation of a smart city. Probably before the smart city concept was created, the city is considered one of the smartest cities because of a tradition of using creative and achievable solutions and the consistent and innovative urban planning. But nevertheless, the life in the city is always changing, so we have to face new challenges, and we can stress some of this challenge. For example, those related to climate change. The factors of the change have already affected many cities, including Curitiba, and the prospects are that they will increase in intensity and in frequency fast. Curitiba is strongly committed to neutral carbon emissions by 2050. In fact, it's formally committed to that. We have a plan for the climate change that has been finished by now, and where we reinforce this commitment. We have the challenge due to digitalization. As day-to-day process become increasingly digital, the skills needed to use and deliver service change. We are concerned with ensuring the good use of data, the availability of good data too, the good use of information technology in a responsible and inclusive way. It's another moment for us to remind the no one left behind Lima. Have some issues related to mobility, and now comes to a little more to the subject we're treating here. Mobility in the city is the biggest contributor to pollution, as we have already said, and is responsible for the largest share of non-productive time. And using mobility as a tool to transform problems into solutions is in the base of history of planning in Curitiba. Two of the innovations that the urban planning Curitiba had are related to that. One of them is the TOD, Transit-Oriented Development, and the other is the use of BRT, the Bus Rapid Transit. So we have been using these tools related to mobility for our planning ever since. We decided to use some strategies to face this challenge, and we can work on some of them. A strong policy of sustainable development, especially working on mobility, as I already said, and also energy and waste, and also the kind of economy that we would like to be okay in our city. Also, the construction of an inclusive knowledge society, and we know that for that we need to build skills. We have to provide good information and access to this good information. And also the implementation of an integrated and flexible system of mobility focused on every city's need, and also articulated with the land use policies. That, as I mentioned, is the way that we use to work on our planning. In a very short line, this is our view on the theme, and now I would like to call Keiko so we can reflect a little bit on more. Please, Professor Keiko.
Thanks, Oscar. For example, we know that IPUC has the very important role for a city future of the city, of Curitiba city, and it has to plan ahead for possible scenarios. In this sense, how is the IPUC preparing the city to achieve the goals set for 2050? Would you please talk a little about talk or say some details about this?
Yeah. First of all, we have to assume that the neutral emission in 2050 is a very optimist proposition, but we believe that we can achieve that. And we have worked mainly in 3 areas. We have this plan that I mentioned that is almost finished, and it's a very detailed plan that focuses in 5 sectors: the environmental quality of the city, energy efficiency, solid waste and effluents, sustainable mobility, and also we could say an intelligent use of big data with what we call urban hypervisor, and also in innovation. Second, we are building capacities to meet the needs that will come with these new demands. We're trying to do that as inclusive as possible, and we are counting on that with a lot of partnerships, including with the academia and the government of Sweden, but also with the C40 cities, with IDB, French Agents for Development, MIT, GIZ, and in Brazil with the Ministry of Regional Development, and among others. And third, we have a portfolio of investment, especially in infrastructure of mobility, of more than $200 million. And we intend to use this investment and creating or enforcing strategies on that support our plan of sustainable development. So we don't want just to make the investments on the best solution for now, but also thinking of the future of the solutions in our greater plan.
Thanks, Oscar. I know that Curitiba is also studying the mobility as a service concept as one that could be integrated in this mobility, Curitiba mobility plan. Does it also address the user's last mile? Could you please talk a little bit about this?
Yes, it is. We have been thinking about approach for that. That's we call the intermediate approach. Let's say we would have the first kind of approach would be the accepting what the market brings to us from as mobility solutions. And of course, we understand that when we talk about isolated solutions, it works well, but for us, it doesn't work so well when we think about integrated solutions. On the other hand, we have some a total control of the government on the mobility solutions, and we think that this kind of approach would give us take us more time to be prepared and maybe lose something. So we would like to focus on the middle, that is creating a way that we could gather these private possibilities and integrated them, focusing not only on the integration of the mobility, but on the use of the city, and also make part of the planning.
Okay, thank you, Oscar. I think we don't have time for another question, so we will skip this one, the last one. And also, I think we have to skip the questions from the audience. Please put them on the chat. Now we have to set the stage, and we are ready. We are ready to launch our new project, Smart City Concepts, Low Carbon Transport and Mobility in a Digital Society. And then let us start with a message from our major project sponsor in Sweden, the innovation agency Vinnova. And
hello, my name is Regina Sommer, and I work at the Swedish innovation agency Vinnova. I'm responsible for our bilateral collaborations between Sweden and Brazil. I'm very happy to join this event today, even if it is digital. And of course, I wish that I had been with you in Curitiba today. One of the major projects that Vinnova has been funding in Brazil is the smart city concept in Curitiba. And we're very, very proud. This has been going on for many years, already since 2013. This project involves several actors, both in Sweden and in Brazil, and also from different sectors, the academia and industry and other organizations. We're very, very proud and happy today to launch a new project focusing on the smart city concept. Thank you very much, and good luck.
I am Paolo Monti, and I am a professor at Chalmers University of Technology. And I am also one of the two co-leaders with Semida of the Swedish side of the project. So you already been seeing the banner everywhere, so you probably already identified the main partners of the project, but let me just summarize them. From the Swedish side, we have Chalmers, we have KTH, we have Vinnova. We will hear, hopefully, a message from them soon. And we have Sweco, and we have Sustainable Vision. From the Swedish side, on the other end, we already heard from EPUC, from UTFPR, and we also have UTFPR, UFPR, UBS, Hexagon, and CISP. So the title of the project was already introduced by Keiko, but it's a smart city concept in Curitiba, low carbon transport and mobility in a digital society. And these are basically the main objectives that we would like to achieve at the end of this project. So as the title suggests, from one side, what we would like to come up at the very end is a recommendation, or actually how we can plan this smart mobility in a digital society. And in order to do so, we identify three main areas that we would like to work on. One is, of course, how we can get solution for these low carbon transport pathways for citizens and goods. The other area is about solution or methods to improve resource and service efficiency. And the third area is about digitalization, and how actually digitalization can be a catalyst to improve sustainability in transport and energy service from one side, but also a tool or a way to promote welfare and prosperity. And the thing that I really like about this project is the multidisciplinary aspect of the work that we will be doing. Multidisciplinary aspect in the sense that the results that will come out of these three main areas that I just talked about will be used and plugged in together in order to get to our final objective, that is the recommendation for the plan. But maybe going a little bit more into the details of which type of work we will be doing. Well, as I said, we have recommendation as the main and final objective of the project. But we are talking about a smart city, right? Smart society in a digital era. So it's a complex environment, and there are a lot of interfaces that we need to tackle. And what I listed here are the three main interfaces that we will be working on during the project. So we will have the ICT infrastructure that we actually will be the enabler for the data integration and sharing. And then the data that will be shared through the ICT infrastructure will be then processed through big data analytics. We will have to learn about the urban dynamics in order to make this and define these smart services. And this makes up for the technological part of the work. But of course, there is another aspect that we cannot forget, that is the governance. So basically, we need to be able to find the best way to engage the main stakeholders within the municipality to actually enable these smart services in a digital era. And also, we need to find the best way to actually engage citizens to be part of this innovation and revolution. The results out of the work on these three interfaces will then used to get to the two main achievements that we are looking for to get at the end. One, we would like to finalize or identify what are the main scenarios for this low carbon transport in Curitiba. And also we would like to have also a platform that can be used through the data that we will be sharing around in the project for the planning and management of the urban infrastructure. And by taking the results out of the platform and the scenario we identified, then we will be able to basically come up with the final recommendation. So before going to the next speaker, I would like just to make a short example of what type of work we will do in terms of ICT infrastructure. And this is because this is mainly the area where I work on. So we will look at the communication infrastructure of Curitiba. We will be assuming to be working with wireless transport and compute resources. But at the very beginning, the initial work that we'll be doing will be to understand what are the service requirements for the smart city environment, and also what are the constraints or the limitation of the existing communication infrastructure in the city. And once we know about the service requirement and the communication infrastructure capabilities, then we will be able to come up with design and operational methods in order to enable the city to run the smart services that will be identified as the main targets. So just to make an example, and actually I like a lot of the slides from Oscar. You saw, if you remember, maybe one slide where floating, when we were talking about climate changes and impact of this climate change. And this is actually where we start looking at things. So we look at what happens when certain areas of the free city are flooded. And through using sensor information and past statistics, we will try to come up with method in order to predict this flooding. Once we know about the flooding, then we can act proactive methods that can reroute the smart services in such a way that the service interruption will be contained. So I would like now to move to the next part of the program. So basically, we have one partner. So I talk about a digital platform, and actually we have a partner that is providing this digital platform for collecting and processing data in the city of Curitiba. And I would like for you to introduce Hexagon and for you to meet them. Thanks.
Hexagon is a technology company, unleashing the power of autonomy to measure and improve what industry needs most. Productivity, efficiency, quality, lower cost, less waste. We believe that industry can save our world, that it can be the solution instead of the problem, and that global commerce is the path to a sustainable planet. Hexagon is intent on making this a reality by putting data to work autonomously to measure progress and improve outcomes. Our technologies digitally capture and measure all things in all places. They position, track, and navigate anything. Simulate billions of real-world scenarios. Deliver location intelligence about anything, anywhere. Together, these technologies fuse the physical world with the digital. They empower us to make that giant leap beyond automation to autonomous. Because autonomy is data doing its best work. Yes, it will drive our cars, yet it will do so much more. It will carefully protect our citizens and nations, accurately construct buildings and infrastructure. Data will do all of these things autonomously. When industry embraces this, sustainable outcomes will follow. Hexagon, empowering an autonomous future.
Yes, this was an example of the platform that Hexagon is making available for our project so that we can visualize a lot of the data, a lot of the intelligence that can be created. And most of all, this platform allows to communicate in a different way. So we have all these experts, we have all this data in the background, but sometimes when we want to pass these results to the policymakers, to the planners, then it's a big challenge. So a platform like this can be a very good way to communicate what we get in the project. So I'm very excited about this. In the previous project, we have demonstrated also electric buses, and it really helps create an understanding of what actually we can get from these innovative technologies. So very exciting. Now, next step, I would like to invite Professor Ricardo Ludas Professor Keiko Fonseca and Professor Eunice Liu from the Technical Federal University in Paraná, who are major partner, is a major partner in our project, to tell us a little bit about some of the questions that we are addressing in this project.
Thank you, Paolo. Thank you, Senida. We are back to Curitiba. I'm Ricardo, co-leader of the Brazilian side of the project. So I'm glad to join this high-level team. After 6 years of launching the first edition of Smart City Concepts in Curitiba, I think this new edition of the project is much more challenging. First of all, it involves around 20 professors and professionals from private and public sectors. I believe that we achieve a degree of maturity that allows us to explore deeper the subject of sustainable city, focusing mainly on mobility, but considering other dimensions of a connected city in a digital society. There are many avenues of opportunities in this project, from low carbon transportation in urban logistics, for instance, to citizen participation in the decision-making of public agents. In my view, the great challenge of the project is not only to provide findings of academic research, but pointing out the directions to build guidelines for further use by agents of the organized society, public or private. Issues like data privacy and deployment of data provided by different users and services should be addressed as well. This aspect of integration of knowledge and competences of different players in an interdisciplinary way is the key in this project. For example, based on the inputs of different players, can we provide comprehensive set of evidences that can be useful for policymakers or directed public administration? This is the type of question that should be addressed during the project. We can have the opportunity to develop more these ideas, and I would like to invite Keiko for saying a few words, and after, Eunice will give us some idea of her view about the project. Thank you.
Thank you, Ricardo. We have learned from the previous project that the evaluation of the new technologies depend on changes on the existing regulations and standards of each partner domain. For example, changes are needed to existing rules to install charging stations or to run a bus line, a new bus line under a new operation model, or to address data ownership and how to use this data and for research purposes. We have also learned how to overcome some of these issues, and the approach is usually about integrating different perspectives of the partners in order to reach a consensus. However, the processes of mapping the achieved scientific evidences into public policies is still a challenge. I believe that the key to build this trust among partners is something that takes time, and the more time we spend on collaborating, sharing perspectives and results, the more we will learn about each other and how to build this trust. Eunice, I think you could talk a little bit about the next challenge.
Yeah, hello, my name is Eunice Liu. I am an architect, urbanist, and also design professor of UTFPR. And we are also researching how can urban mobility be improved with citizen participative process, because we know the importance of the participation of the population. So we are mapping existing models of open data collection through existing channels nowadays in Curitiba, like the 156 telephone numbers, or also apps, desktop platforms, and also offline tools by which any citizen can inform the government about mobility issues that will be later analyzed to define public policies for mobility improvement. We aim proposing a participatory environment and efficient tools for local communities that can potentialize their engagement for different low carbon mobility models.
Okay, thank you, Ricardo. Thank you, Keiko and Eunice. Unfortunately, we don't have time for questions because we are compressing this very much. But we do have time for a few words with Eric, who's here representing KTH. We have 3 different groups from KTH participating in the project, which are?
Well, we are the communications department and energy systems, and myself, who is from the transport planning department.
Yes. And there are many professors and colleagues, research colleagues that are involved. Yeah, yes. And we want to bring also the students, as we have done in the past. And hopefully we can go to Curitiba next time and have also a kickoff there. But Eric, tell us a little bit about KTH's role also in the project. What kind of questions will be addressed from your side?
Well, we are trying to address this complex challenge of sustainable urban mobility by combining the skills of our different departments. And specifically, we want to focus on freight transport and waste management in an urban setting. So we want to look at energy sources for the vehicles and different policies to move towards more sustainable fuel sources and electrification. But we also want to look at how these services can be organized and the logistics side of it, how they can be planned more efficiently to drive as few kilometers as needed to provide the services and to have as high fill rate inside the vehicles at all times as possible. So these are some of the things we can contribute with from transport planning side.
Yes, and the emissions, of course. I think it's interesting that because last time we focused very much on the bus transport. It's actually something Curitiba is very known for, their bus system. And we have looked at the energy use and emissions there, but we haven't looked into freight and other types of services inside the city. So I think it will be very interesting to look at that and to see what kind of solutions that we can have for the case of Curitiba. And you have worked on these issues in Stockholm. So what are some of the questions that Stockholm is looking into?
Yes, Maria mentioned the climate action plan of Stockholm, and there they mention several different actions they are considering now to increase the fuel efficiency of freight transport. One of them is to support establishing logistics centers where heavy trucks coming from outside the city can be unloaded, and then the goods loaded to smaller electric vehicles or electric cargo bikes, which can distribute the goods the last mile to the end customers. Another initiative is to have same vehicles providing both the delivery of freight, but at the same time pick up waste from stores and companies and take the waste back on the same route. And that can be a way of making sure that vehicles don't run empty, but they are at all times transporting something in an efficient way.
And here the digitalization is also an important component, isn't it? So that you really can do the best possible planning. Using the new tools. Yeah.
And access to data and planning around the data would be very important.
Yes, Exactly. So I think at the end of the day, there are many similar issues. I think solutions, they do have a local touch because of the realities of cities can be different. Even what is acceptable for the public can be different. But there are many common denominators here, so we can learn a lot from each other, isn't it?
I think so.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Eric, and thank you, everybody, for listening to us. Thank you for the colleagues in Curitiba, and looking forward for a very exciting project. Don't forget to check the program of the Innovation Weeks. There are many interesting programs there, events there, and you can just register and participate. See you in Brazil, in Sweden, or digitally again soon. Bye-bye.